Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Rooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to the Chamber's new series, The AI Advantage, Leading the Commonwealth Forward. Today's launch event is focused on the state of AI, the ways our business community and society are increasingly embracing this technology, and how Massachusetts can succeed during this technology revolution. The Chamber's AI series that we're launching today will run throughout 2025 and offer a platform to discuss the many opportunities and strategies for people and businesses to consider as they leverage the power of AI. Well, I'm sure today's conversation will touch on the many dimensions of the ongoing AI revolution. During future events, we'll be able to take a deeper dive into topics like government regulation and ethical issues, as well as how AI is being deployed in specific industries like higher education, healthcare, financial services, and others. So stay tuned for further announcements about our AI series, and you can visit bostonchamber.com for the scheduling of those events. Now, I'd like to introduce today's featured speakers. After the presentations that you'll hear, we'll dive into a detailed conversation about how the regional business community is adopting AI tools. But first, we'll have Secretary Jason Snyder, the Secretary of the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security for the Commonwealth. Secretary Snyder has more than 30 years of information technology experience in government, higher education, and the private sector. Secretary Snyder worked at Harvard for almost 10 years as a program director for identity and access management, as managing director of architecture and engineering, and as chief technology officer since 2015. Secretary Snyder recently led the Haley Driscoll administration Artificial Intelligence Strategic Task Force to study AI and generative artificial intelligence, Gen AI, technology and its impact on the state, private businesses, higher education institutions, and our constituents. The task force conducted outreach, collected input from stakeholders and experts for the purpose of advising the governor and executive branch on the state's role in AI implementation. The task force was also charged with finding ways to encourage leading industries to adopt this technology and to ensure its continued success. We look forward to hearing an update on the work of that task force from Secretary Snyder today. Next, we have Rob Levin, Senior Partner at McKinsey Company. Rob leads the digital and AI transformation practice in North America and the Boston office of McKinsey Digital. He led efforts to develop digital and AI strategies, build AI solutions, and hire and train AI talent at McKinsey. He also managed the core platform modernization, cloud migration, and Gen AI coding automation. During today's event, Rob will share highlights of an upcoming McKinsey AI report on the state of AI. And our moderator today is Clayton Matero, partner at Glasswing Ventures, a VC firm that invests in visionary early-stage founders who push the boundaries of the possibility to reinvent enterprise and security markets using the power of AI and frontier technology. Clayton has deep expertise in data science, entrepreneurship, and product management. As the former head of data science at SocialFlow, Clayton led the machine learning efforts for the software platform, including its proprietary AI-powered content classifier for automating editorial content categorization. Also, I know she's very proud that the Chamber recognized Clayton as one of our 10 outstanding young leaders in 2023. So now I'm going to pass it off to to Rob Levin to get it started in today's session. So Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim. Let me see if we can get this to full screen. Okay. We seeing that okay? Great. Well, thanks, Jim. Thank you for the invitation to address this group today. So I'm Rob Levin. I'm a senior partner in Quantum Black, which is McKinsey's AI implementation company. Um, and today I'll share a little bit of an early sneak peek into the research that we will release in a few weeks, which is our 2024 State of AI survey. But today I thought I'd address a few interesting takeaways from that research, which will be forthcoming. So we'll talk broadly about AI, and then of course we'll talk about generative AI and its impact over the past year or so. The first message, for the past decade, McKinsey Global Institute, which is McKinsey's internal think tank, has been doing all of the research on the automation potential of AI. And so a few messages come out of that at this point in time. The first is that if we think about the total economic value created by all businesses around the world, that's about $100 trillion annually. And our analysis would say that there's 20 to 30% productivity value creation on top of that 100 trillion that can be unlocked with the proven science today of AI as it's infused into all different tasks and jobs across industries. But importantly, 2/3 of that value is still what we would call analytical AI. It's machine learning, it's mathematical optimization algorithms applied to processes, and only 1/3 is sort of either the layering generative AI on top of that math as sort of a more intuitive way to interact with the AI, or truly net new use cases enabled by generative AI. So that's sort of the second message, is that 2/3 of the value still remains in machine learning, which many companies have been pursuing and implementing for several years before generative AI became widely available last January. However, with this new generative AI capability, this is where the additional value we see it. A huge amount in sales and marketing, a significant amount in software engineering. I'll often say that I think the press sometimes underreports the true superpower of generative AI, which is as the first natural language interface for writing software, for coding. In addition to all of the sort of synthesis and co-pilot type use cases that I'm sure many of folks on this call have become familiar with. But this is where we see the value accruing. And we have seen this to look into generative AI briefly, specifically, we've seen a huge increase in adoption even from last year to this year in terms of regular usage. And you can sort of see on the right side that in particular in businesses that are very much knowledge businesses at their core, legal, professional services, you see higher adoption. But also there is significant adoption amongst more senior executives, even more so than middle managers, I think, as those executives start to use it for their own personal tasks. And yet, when we step back, we're still very much in early days of adoption. One way of thinking about that is to say that there's 300 million active users of ChatGPT, which is only 7% of the active user base of WhatsApp. So we're still quite far away from something that looks like universal adoption. And as the new refresh cycle of Apple phones comes through and Apple Intelligence becomes more pervasive, that will certainly be a significant adoption driver. So we've seen this incredible adoption curve, but another way, if you look at it on the right, is to say you can sort of see the ramp of folks going into Google and searching for generative AI, but it's a little bit plateaued. We're at that first plateau of generative AI adoption before we break out to the next. And what will change in generative AI moving forward? We're, the first iteration of these large language models, as many of us experienced them, were these very simple Q&A based single task type capabilities. And now we're moving towards the era of virtual assistants and what many will call agents, which is basically stringing together multiple tasks such that they can actually perform a job or a significant portion of a job. And that typically requires multiple models architected together to solve this. Microsoft, for one, uses this analogy, which is they would say that in the same way that Apple built iOS, and then lots of companies built apps on top of iOS, Microsoft, OpenAI, and others are building foundational models, and other company will build agents on top. Will build these sort of persona-based sets of tasks that are targeted at addressing a significant portion of the work of individual workers and personas. So that's sort of the evolution we're seeing going forward. But if we step back and we think about this, I think the other message is that despite all of the excitement, attention, investment, adoption is always slower than we think. And so this chart is sort of showing our adoption across companies, across functions over a period of years. And what you see is that certainly since 2023, adoption has seen a significant increase, and that's largely been driven by the excitement and the planning and the investment around generative AI. But if you actually step back from that, in many of these examples, there are individual models in production. They have not fundamentally transformed the way a function of the business works. Even though at this point in time, you might say that 45% of companies, these are companies over $100 million in revenue, would say that we have something version of AI, machine learning, generative AI, in production, in, let's say, in this middle column, more than 2 functions of the business amongst perhaps 20. So adoption is slower than we think, but also the depth of adoption within a given function is not as pervasive as we might need to get to value. Here's how we see the adoption across different industries. It is not a huge amount of daylight. You definitely see more adoption in industries like media, telecom, using it around their interaction with consumers, but also, let's say, AI in the Netflix algorithm of next show to recommend, things like this. But also, significant adoption in more traditional enterprises, industrial manufacturing, consumer goods. So not a huge amount of difference amongst industries. From a functional lens, it is perhaps what we might suspect. There is more adoption in areas like marketing and sales, whether that's using AI to give sales folks prescriptive selling scripts, or whether that's using generative AI to create dynamic, personalized copy for marketing to different segments. But also in service operations, right? Synthesizing, for example, all the past interactions of a customer as they call the call center or chat with the call center, suggesting responses back, a tremendous amount of activity there. A lot of interest in product and service development. For example, in R&D for drug discovery, but also by the same token in food. Food companies are using this to think about formulation of new food combinations, or even just to come up rapidly with new product extension or packaging concepts through generative AI. And software engineering, as I mentioned, another huge area of focus as folks start to use these tools for coding automation. A lot of interest in places like manufacturing as well. We tend to see the adoption there being lower because the ROI is more difficult of rinsing and repeating AI across many different manufacturing settings, different production lines. That has been a bit of a slowing down of the adoption there. But the more important question in our minds is not adoption, but value. And AI transformation, we should only undertake it if we see significant competitive value, significant P&L impact to our businesses. And so the adoption, the value story is a little bit more complicated, as we see on this page. Looking overall, less than a quarter of companies would sort of say where we've deployed AI to increase revenue in a portion of our business, we've seen more than a 5% increase. Or where we've deployed AI to sort of significantly inflect the productivity of a given operational process, only 12% have seen 10% impact to that cost base. And this, this is a traditional gap we see between adoption and value. And it looks a little bit different across different industries, but fundamentally, the top line message I think is the same, that adoption or effort does not always translate to value, and that's what we're really interested in. So one way we think about this in just sort of anecdotal terms is we see a lot of companies that have started to pursue generative AI. By the way, not dissimilar from how many companies who were early adopters of analytical AI or machine learning did, 7, 8 years ago, which is in January, a lot of us woke up to the power of large language models. In our companies, we sort of launched a task force, started to think about areas of opportunity. But in our experience, probably 80% of companies took path one, which is they found some interesting use cases bottom up. They launched some pilots, and those pilots worked. But fundamentally, most of them are still piloting. They're not necessarily adopting at scale. And then we see sort of a smaller set of companies, but in fact, these are the ones who are starting to see the actual value capture, who we'll call focus transformers, where they certainly saw the opportunities across many areas of their business, but they've been far more focused in picking business domains, sub-functions, chunks of end-to-end processes that they can fundamentally reimagine and go sort of from to change the work. And changing the work will always require multiple use cases because any job is a set of many, many tasks. But the companies that have been more focused on sort of that more aggressive vision of inflecting the way an entire process works, but also, and by doing that, when you sort of add a bunch of use cases together against a given process area, you can start to sort of see how it will move forward operating metrics, financial metrics associated with that process or function or line of business. And those focused transformers are definitely seeing more value versus those that are sort of peanut butter spreading, if you will, use cases across functions across the organization. That's very much in keeping with our overall philosophy on digital and AI transformation, which we laid out in our book, Rewired. I won't today sort of go through that, but basically this is just to say that, from strategy through a set of enabling capabilities, through a very rigorous focus on tracking and driving adoption amongst those internal and external users whose work we're trying to inflect, this incredible sort of rigor is what it takes to do this. It's always more than just the tech of it. Last piece from our research is, as we think about the correlation between those companies that are seeing significant value and the practices they're following, there are a lot of positive correlations. You can see them on this page, but 4 that are like the most correlated with those companies that are actually seeing value, not just adoption. These 4, so workflows. They've fundamentally thought, as I said, about this sort of from to inflection in how work will be done, and thought about the multiple use cases it will require to change that process or part of the business. They are tracking very rigorously. Part of the data on the page earlier about adoption, a lot of, more than half of the companies would say they aren't seeing value, or they don't know because they don't have actually a rubric to measure it clearly. So that's clearly an important one. They have a very clear roadmap, not just of how to build pilots, but how those pilots need to get adopted in that function or across other lines of business or across other geographies until the entire value adds up for the company. They've thought through that roadmap beyond the pilot. And last, clear correlation with leadership role modeling. One piece of analysis we've done shows a very strong correlation between the digital savviness of an ELT and a board and the performance of a company. And we see this here in a micro sense, which is that there's a very strong correlation where most of the senior leaders understand their role in driving this, because an AI transformation is fundamentally a business transformation. It is not just the purview of the CIO or CDO. It is a full team sport, we would say. So those are some of the correlations that we're seeing to value. Last message. Stepping back from this, a few thoughts we have. It's not all about generative AI. It's also about analytical AI and also, a lot of work on data, of course. Very often we need to build digital interfaces for users to interact with these models. Focused transformers are seeing not just adoption, but value. Number 5, there is, of course, we have to focus on data, talent, how to build these models well. But over time, and even today, we see this clear gap between companies that are building tech well and companies that are doing all the rest to adopt it well and actually drive that scaled value. And I think we'll without going through all the points in our thinking on Rewired, but would encourage folks to take a look at that afterwards. In our minds, it is this sort of complex, rigorous recipe of many approaches it will take to steadily, consistently identify the opportunities where AI can improve the business, organize, build, adopt, scale, capture value. And so we would just encourage everybody to think about that more rigorous approach beyond just what is the AI model we're going to build. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Rob. I think now we're going to move on to Secretary Jason Snyder.
Good morning. Thank you to the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce for having me today. Thank you, Jim, for the introduction, and thank you, McKinsey's Rob Levin, for your report presentation. I am grateful to be with all of you this morning to talk about one of the most important things that EOTS, the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security, is working on right now, artificial intelligence. When I think of any success that I've had leading IT development, the secret sauce to that positive outcome was collaboration. I am so proud of the collaborative work that our administration has fostered on AI. It starts with the collaboration with Secretary Howe and her wonderful team at Economic Development on the AI task force. Ours has truly been a strong partnership that has created one team across many organizations. I am proud to co-chair the task force with Secretary Howe, along with my colleagues, the City of Boston CIO, Santi Garces, and UMass CIO, Michael Milligan. The task force started with the signing of the AI executive order by Governor Healy in February of this year, and we look forward to releasing the final report and recommendations of the task force in the coming weeks. The task force is a sprint by design. We wanted to ensure it would produce a report and recommendations that, as the governor says, allow us to put some points on the board right now. The task force recognized the urgency and vision of this moment in the emerging technology. So what was the focus of the AI task force? When the executive order was signed, states were locking down AI usage, actively seeking to understand all the uses, all the different groups that were doing AI. In fact, the state of Maine actually banned the use of AI by their employees until they could better understand the risk associated with AI. Our focus in Massachusetts has been different. It's truly focused on understanding the opportunities that exist and understanding risk, of course, but through usage, through understanding that we will dive into the AI space, and through that usage, we'll better understand the risk and needs that we have to do to ensure its protection. So who was on the task force? We brought industry leaders from specifically Massachusetts. Everybody was a Massachusetts resident. From climate, robotics, finance, higher education, healthcare, true innovators, and life science. And then we also, both the Senate and Senator Moore, and from the House, we had Representative Farley Bouvier and policy leaders like from the AFL-CIO. And we worked to identify opportunities and share expertise and identify a series of recommendations. Our area of focus, or areas of focus from there, has been to identify the AI use cases that we believe can best help Massachusetts, both within the industries that we discussed, but also across them. And what we found with AI, and this is something that's important to note, AI is really, really, really good at taking complex data and simplifying it, generating new information from that data. That's really its strength. And we did identify risk associated with the creation of false information and also some bias type things. But if you simplify it and you focus on the complex data and simplifying, generating new information, that really reduces that risk to a great extent. We've also focused on workforce. We believe in Massachusetts that there will be very few jobs lost directly to AI, but instead it'll create a series of opportunities. The thought process behind this is that AI itself will not directly lose any members of workforce, but members of AI of the workforce who know AI will replace those who do not. So we really wanted to then focus on training and education from K through 12 onward, and then also account for small businesses and ensuring that whatever approach we had accounted for the needs of small businesses as well. We also recognize that the ability for different businesses and different communities to use AI is limited. It's very expensive. The computing necessary to do the most complex processing of AI is expensive. So we also focused on the development of some kind of computing approach that could service the researchers and leading industries of Massachusetts. And then we also recognize the foundation of all elements of AI is data. So what were our recommendations? First and foremost is working to build out that AI research center that I hinted about with the computing. This will involve high-powered computing resources that are necessary to run AI-enabled computation. Organizations across the Commonwealth will be able to tap into these resources, along with a mechanism for refining data and working to establish to identify what is the high-quality data needed to support AI research. We will also, within the state, will constantly refine the public data sets we have, recognize that we need high quality data if we want to provide high quality insights from state government data. We will also have recommendations for workforce development, upskilling and worker training programs that will ensure our workforce is ready for the emerging tech environment. We want to make sure that the benefits and economic development opportunities associated with the research center are available to everyone in the state. And I believe this is a great way to democratize AI access for better research, worker training, and application in industry, academia, and government. This wasn't the only thing. The task force and its recommendations wasn't the only thing that we focused on. We also partnered with the rest of state government to start work on applied AI for improving our services to our residents. This started with the development of a Commonwealth-specific sandbox. What's that? So if you think about the risks associated with AI and data, if you're using ChatGPT, for example, all of the data that you provide remains with ChatGPT. Clearly, that is a risk for government use. And so what we did was we created a walled-off, secured environment that allows us to experiment with Gen AI in a way that does not allow our data to escape or train public large language models. We do this because we know that there is a risk to AI use, and we're committed to going on offense while using AI in a responsible way. Use of the AI sandbox itself is governed by the executive branch terms and conditions for AI use and associated policy for AI use within state government. And we regularly revisit these guidelines to ensure that they are relevant and up to date with current and emergent developments in the AI space. And the response from this AI sandbox has been incredible. Just last month, we had a showcase at AWS in the Seaport where technical staff from all over the executive branch came and presented their AI work that they have been able to develop and establish using our sandbox. The projects that our colleagues across the administration had been working on are truly outstanding and could be transformational in time. The winning entry, it was a science fair style, so everybody presented from a science fair perspective, here's what I'm doing, here's how I'm doing, and they had a little presentation associated with it. And then we all voted on which one we thought was most significant, and we had various other awards as well. But the overall winning entry would simplify the presentation of child care opportunities. As a father of 5, I can definitely see that value. I've spent a lot of time online trying to find daycare for my kids. And so having the ability to use AI to simplify what's available is incredible. I would note that these cross-organizational projects underscore that we are not just doing AI for AI's sake. We're actually using this technology to improve services that we deliver to the state's residents. Other examples include the future of cybersecurity. If you think about AI and cybersecurity, we are already seeing examples today of bad actors using AI to try to compromise our state IT systems. They're using it to generate better websites that look more similar to ours. They're using it to provide better phishing exercises. That's where they send an email that, before you'd be able to see, oh, that doesn't really look like it's written well. We're now seeing AI written email phish attacks that are, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference from a regular one. This person could say, hey, I'm your manager, and you'd be like, yeah, it could be my manager. So this is an emerging area where we're using AI for cybersecurity to defend against AI attacks with cybersecurity. We recognize the urgency of standing up new defensive capabilities, and this new reality involves using the people, the process, and technology across the Commonwealth to defend against this. One other thing we're proud of, this year, EOTS and the Executive Office of ANF partnered with Northeastern University to launch a collaboration between higher ed and the Haley Driscoll administration to leverage AI across state government using the sandbox again. Northeastern co-op students assisted the state in identifying AI solutions in 5 different use cases that create efficiencies and are resident-centric. The partnership embedded these Northeastern undergraduate and graduate students in state agencies for 6 months, and they safely explored AI implementation and developed active things using AI that can help state government. So one example that I always like to provide is one group was assigned to our Mass Highway Department. And if you think about when an engineering project happens, like I want to build a bridge, today or prior to this AI work, they would spend about 2 to 3 weeks identifying all the policy associated with creating a bridge. And it was online, so it wasn't like they're going through books or anything like that, but it was online, it was complex, and you had to really go through all the different complex data sets to better understand, what that policy was. Using AI, the students were able to develop something that you say, hey, I want to create a bridge, and immediately it comes back with all of the relevant policy, along with citations for where that policy came from. The Mass Highway team was blown away by this work. They went in, we'll see what AI can do, and they're like, this provides immediate value for us. It's in production today, and the Mass Highway Commissioner was so blown away, he hired the 2 students that worked on Mass Highway. So they're now actively working within MassDOT and Mass Highway on additional AI experiences. In fact, 8 of the 12 students from that first cohort have since joined the state workforce because they were so excited about the opportunity to innovate, to solve real problems that we're dealing with in state government, and also have the culture of innovation that is obviously encouraged throughout state government. So I'm excited that we are now in cohort 2, and next week I get to see their presentations back to me and what they've created. So I'm excited by that. I would like to conclude by thanking the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce for willingness to engage and collaborate with us as we work on solutions for the big multifaceted challenges of our day. I've always said, and I'm sure you have picked up from my remarks this morning, that the big transformational projects we need to complete to best serve our customers, the residents of the state, are best done as a team. I can truly say that we are one team in this state working towards technology solutions that benefit every single resident of Massachusetts. Thank you again for having me, and I look forward to the upcoming discussion. Thank you.
So Cleda and Rob, come on in and let's have a conversation.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Secretary Snyder. I'll kick off our discussion with you, Rob. My first question to you is, you mentioned in your presentation that the adoption of AI has slowed down. In your view, what has contributed to that plateauing in a way or slow down of enterprises adopting AI?
Great, thanks for the question. Just to clarify, I wouldn't say it's slowed down. I would say it is accelerating. It is slower than the attention, the conversation, the hype might suggest. I think on the consumer side, the consumer adoption, there is this interesting plateau, right? Comparing it to WhatsApp, and many think, and I agree, that it will take things like Apple Intelligence becoming pervasive for it as consumers, for it to become part of our daily workflow. There are many of us, I think, that probably go to ChatGPT or go to Perplexity for certain things, but it is not yet pervasive throughout our consumer technology lives. In enterprise, I'll just back to, I think the challenge of generative AI is exactly what we saw with machine learning, and we could use other technology innovations of the past couple of decades. They would look rather similar, which is that very often there's a tendency for us to think about this purely as tech, and to think about, what is the model to build and how do I go build the model, and not enough focus on I'm building these models to fundamentally change the way work is done. I need to reimagine what the work will look like in the future. There will be many techniques I need to get from A to B. I need to think about the orchestration of the people change, the capability building. Many of us in our work lives, I think, we get a new technology from our employers, and it might not fully fit within our workflow, right? It might not be something we adopt, despite sort of top-down desire for that to be the case. And so just again and again, we see this sort of comprehensive thought about what it takes to fundamentally change work, and all those things that have to be put into place, from the tracking to the orchestration, and yes, building the models. And all that has to be done well in order for this to truly be adopted to value.
I agree. And you're preaching to the choir there. You're speaking about the bridging of the technology and the real use case application of such technology. One more follow-up for you. How have you seen budgets within the enterprise adjust as the strategic planning has geared more towards AI across the board?
Yeah, I think we would say, if we take the lens of the CIO, CDO, it is a difficult job. It has always been a difficult job. It's a difficult job now because most CIO, CDOs, I would say, are faced with three competing, seem to be competing priorities, which is one, of course, AI enable our business and create value that way. Two is, modernize our core platforms, right? Because most companies are still on a journey there. And three is, reduce the unit costs of IT. So there's competing challenges, competing priorities. We definitely see the shift in budgets towards more AI enablement. But if you stand back from a typical corporate IT budget, you'll often see less than 20% of the investment goes towards changing the work versus sort of running the work, keeping the ship running with resilient systems, keeping operations going. That hasn't overly changed. It's still sort of a zero-sum game with respect to many IT budgets in many companies. And the companies that have changed that game have been able to show these significant ROI positive adoptions of AI. And then they've been able to change the conversation in their companies to sort of say that deserves specific additional investment beyond just thinking about, IT as a percentage of our revenue. So that's what's changed the game in some companies that have started to really have P&L value.
Thank you. Secretary Snyder, I'll move to you, or my next question is to you. How is the Commonwealth fostering innovation and supporting startups? You mentioned a couple of specific programs. Are there any programs or initiatives really that stand out to attract tech entrepreneurs to start, build, and stay in Massachusetts?
Absolutely. I think this group will be really excited about the outcomes related to the AI task force and what we announced related to startups. Our focus, so Secretary Howe from Economic Development brings a focus on entrepreneurial spirit that really can't be overstated. And so she's ensured that the outcomes and the thought processes behind this really focuses on what we can do for startups. So aside from the training and education that I talked about, another element of this AI research center would be something that provides encouragement, financial support, granting, something like that, that really encourages startups to use AI to stay in the state and to grow and mature. More to come. That part is will be announced with the AI Research Center, but it is an area of focus. We also think the partnership that we've had with higher ed in the establishment of AI Task Force and then the future AI Computing Center will also help, because that will allow higher ed partnership with startups as well.
When speaking about AI, a lot of questions that come up too is about data governance, regulation, policies. As AI has become a lot more embedded into our business communities, are there steps being taken to ensure that regulations and policies keep up with the pace of AI evolution or progress?
Sure. So within state government, I talked a little bit about the sandbox and the terms and conditions associated with that, their associated policy for AI use, which was encouraging but protective. I was just in Europe about a month ago, and one of the things that was very interesting to me is all of the European entrepreneurs were very actively concerned about some of the policy that's been put in place in Europe. The term that it was discouraging innovation is something that I took away very strongly. And so within Massachusetts, we want to be very careful with any kind of regulatory demands we put in place that could discourage innovation and discourage our entrepreneurial community from use. There is balance there. We want to make sure that we do protect privacy and things like that, but it is something that we don't want to discourage innovation within Massachusetts.
And to that, my follow-up question as well is, Massachusetts is home to so many talented universities, and the AI talent here is unparalleled, in my biased opinion. How do you think that plays as startups or innovation is starting and igniting and entrepreneurs are building businesses here? How does that play within what the state is doing and preparing for?
So it does start. So I talked a little bit about the higher ed partnership, and we're actually expanding the partnership to other higher ed institutions across Massachusetts as well, within state and higher ed. So there's that. Ensuring that the government impact and the ability for government to work with higher ed is a focus, especially in the areas of AI and technology. And so we will continue to build on that and continue that partnership. And then going along with that partnership, having the great ideas that come out of our brilliant higher ed institutions, having them be accessible through this AI research center for different startup companies or any entrepreneurs that I want to talk to higher ed people. I want to understand what their ideas and thoughts are. They all come together with this AI research center. And so bringing everybody together, including higher ed, to work on computing, to work on common problems that face the Commonwealth, that face the world, using AI, I think is a tremendous opportunity for Massachusetts.
And from where I sit, I completely agree. We've seen many PhD students trying to really commercialize their technologies that they're building during their PhD tenure or dissertation. Many computer science, data science students, undergrad, move into entrepreneurship and start their own businesses. So it's very exciting from a early stage AI VC world to see that community grow even more.
Absolutely. It's so ripe for additional development within Massachusetts. I think it can only help.
My next question is to both of you. I'll pose it to both. From an economic standpoint, what opportunities do you see for Massachusetts to capitalize on the growth of AI? I know we've touched on a little bit on those, but Rob, I'd love your ideas as well. how can businesses, both small and large, really benefit from this increasing demand for AI-driven products and services?
Great question. I always, when I often think about, and I'm born and raised in Boston, I often think about our business community as just this wonderfully diverse business community, right? We have leading companies across so many different industries in a way that many other U.S. cities don't, that are very dominated by certain industries. And it's one part of the magic. Combine that with this incredible university talent base. So I would say two things. The first is that I think all companies can benefit from what we will call these horizontal use cases of AI and generative AI, right? Managing our email box, helping create synthesis, putting an explainability layer on top of anything in our company's, any reporting, any insights we get, putting that layer on. Those kind of exist broadly. Then within given industries, we believe it's sort of about finding those competitive leverage points. We're an incredibly rich biotech industry, right? In biotech, it's very much about R&D, right? Not just using AI for protein folding models and coming up with that, but also just scouring a million existing known molecules for other potential conditions that they could address, things like that. That's a real leverage point in R&D. Just pops to mind, I'll take a TripAdvisor, right? Also headquartered here in Massachusetts. You think about this agent approach to performing tasks and how that will transform hospitality and planning vacations and things like that. Very transformative from sort of a hunt and peck and search for the hotel type of motion. Let's take hospitals, right? We have an incredible hospital ecosystem. One of the fastest uptakes of use cases I've seen there is ambient listening for physicians on their rounds, right? AI listens to them as they go about their rounds. It inputs a draft of those rounds notes into the EMR. They go back and check it. Saves every physician a couple hours at the end of the day. That's becoming a table stake for hospitals who want to keep their physicians happy. So there's a whole range of these things, but it is rather specific to individual business models and industries where those real leverage points will be.
And then I'll jump in with a few comments. So, the AI task force itself, when I talked about those industries, so again, we had climate specialists from across Massachusetts, robotics specialists, finance, higher ed, healthcare, life sciences. Those industries specifically, we use the power of our ability in state government to convene different groups and bring them all together. And their comments to each other was that AI, because it's so disruptive, having the different industries work together, having many members of finance, many members of healthcare coming together and sharing their ideas and thoughts. There was active interest. I've heard this from many members of the task force, is there's something we can do going forward to continue that convening power to bring everybody together so they can continue sharing the ideas, because it was something that, it's not surprising. Right? The healthcare, they come together, they're all dealing with the same problem statements, and many times the use cases that they're dealing with and that AI can assist with, really sharing those ideas and moving towards solution. It's not really a competitive advantage. It's something that is really just leading Massachusetts into the future.
Thank you both. Secretary Snyder, you touched on a little bit on AI for security and their security for AI as well. I'm very curious to get both of your thoughts, and maybe Rob, I'll start with you. How do you see enterprises look at security for AI these days? Is there a specific sandbox, or is it under CISOs, or is the CISO function changing? Do you see that at all?
Yeah, I think there is certainly heightened sensitivity around this because of, as Secretary Snyder was mentioning, this sort of public-private nature of some of these models and data sets. You want a model that is trained on the open internet, but also, when it leverages your own internal proprietary data, protects that. And architecturally, that is very, very possible, and many companies have solved that. I think that, but the first inning of this was actually, you see a lot of companies that initially sort of removed access to ChatGPT, right, before they can then come back with a bit of their enterprise platform and guardrails. Two more thoughts with respect to security. One, on security, like your comment on phishing, there are certain things that we can do from an application standpoint, an architecture standpoint, to make our data more secure. But then it's just training, 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 right? You know, no amount of protection is going to prevent, if an employee opens a phishing email, like that is the vector of risk. And so just like that with AI, a lot of capability building and training, what are the rules of the road? And the second thing I'd say that is more net new about AI is that when we have models, and most of these use cases are still human in the loop, right? But still, we have this additional level of reputational risk, right? What we call, you know, AI model ethics, which is not just data privacy, data security, but it's also what if the model hallucinates, right? What if it's interacting with a customer and right, makes a mistake? And so we're definitely seeing companies up their game in terms of bringing legal, risk, compliance together to create these guardrails for how AI needs to run within a given company. Rules that didn't necessarily exist in a world before AI. And I'd say that's net new.
And some of those mishaps have happened already. We witnessed them last year and this year.
And some of that, and it goes to regulatory, some of this, I think it's this inexorable, you need to have issues and set precedents for these things to be addressed and fixed. It's never sort of designed perfectly well ahead of time.
And in my view, we invest in security, cybersecurity, and data governance, compliance, and then coordinated defense. But one of those areas is also identity access management. And before AI became so mass consumerized, we had machines and people as the identities where bad agents could really enter. And now we have a whole new identity piece, which is the AI version of it, or the Gen AI version of it, whatever is artificially generated. Yeah, Secretary Snyder, please.
So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. First, on identity access management, one of the things we've implemented as part of our digital roadmap, or you know, the digital experience that consumers or whoever uses our websites use, we are creating a single login for all users of the Commonwealth. We now already have 2 million users associated with our single sign-on approach or single login, and we'll continue to expand that over the coming years. We believe, and we've already seen this, there are examples today where there was active fraud because, you know, the idea of a distributed identity being somehow better has been disproven, because you distribute the identity, you distribute the maintenance of that identity, and that distributed maintenance results in different levels of security. And the attackers figure this out, and you know, they attack the thing that's the weakest. By building a single identity approach and building that up and investing it and ensuring that we do have the protections in place for Massachusetts, will protect Massachusetts residents and data going forward. One other thing I wanted to say regarding cybersecurity, you know, foundational to AI is data, right? Data drives everything. We've talked about that a few times in different answers, but also foundational to any kind of cyber attack and cyber protection is also data. So they share that. And, you know, a while back, this idea came up of a zero trust architecture. The idea being that instead of building security protections at the border and only at the border, that you actually, you know, make the assumption that they're in, and how do you protect all elements associated with it. Identity management is one area of that, but also routinely building different things in place to protect your data and providing management of that data across the entire ecosystem of your IT development is essential. So I think those were some of the key elements. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say regarding identity management, and people may not know this, somewhere between 80 and 90% of people's first experiences with any state service is online. It's through IT. And so if you think about that, like, you know, people no longer, you know, you think about your use with the RMV, right? And you don't you go online first, right? You're not going to walk over to the RMV and take a ticket and wait, however long that is. You're going to first go in online and see what you can do online. That's what everybody is doing. And so the idea of building a real focus on IT as the front door to state services is critical.
Thank you. I want to conclude this discussion with one more question. What are you most excited about the next year when it comes to AI adoption, security? I'd love your thoughts both.
So I'll launch first. For me, what I'm most excited about does relate directly to our data synchronization. So our digital experience focus has been to put the constituent first. Likewise, we're now looking at our data sets and ensuring that it's constituent focused as well. So this idea that having siloed data areas and not bringing them together to better understand the holistic experience of a constituent is really important. Again, underlies AI as well. So our focus on providing stronger data integration across state data sets is something that really excites me, and I think will ultimately help the citizens of Massachusetts tremendously.
And for me, it would be, I think I'm excited that I think we're into this sort of second era of AI, right? From the interesting use cases, experimentation into more transformational efforts in different portions of the business, back to, whether that's in R&D and biotech or transforming how patients interact with our healthcare facilities or our healthcare insurers, and on and on. I think that there are in each industry at least a couple of really transformative from-to moments here that over the next couple years, these companies will sort of figure out the path to fundamentally change that work. We have all the elements, all the tools at our disposal, and now it's just sort of the hard work of business orchestration to bed them down and get them adopted. But I think I'm very optimistic about what the next couple of years can do in transforming the work in a couple areas and across businesses.
And to answer my own question, an extension to that, frankly, I'm even more excited to back entrepreneurs who are really building applications in these AI-powered, AI-native areas. So if anyone's building, anyone in the room or virtually, please reach out. Jim, over to you. Thank you both for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Cleta. Thank you, Secretary Snyder. Thank you, Rob, for a fascinating conversation. It was all that we hoped for and more. And thank you to the more than 300 people who joined this event through our various channels. For those that may want to just tell others about it, this session was recorded and will be available on our YouTube page through the Chamber website probably later today or tomorrow. So take a look at that. Just reflecting on the conversation today, I'm tremendously optimistic. I always think about Massachusetts' potential and its business community to lead not just the nation, but the world in certain industries. And I certainly believe that given the conversation today, that my optimism is well-founded. When you think about some of the things that our panelists said today about approaching regulation without stifling innovation, which I know is not exactly the approach going on in other places. When you think about what the Secretary said about the ways in which the Commonwealth is aggressively seeking ways to improve government services and the way that citizens interact with its government in an innovative way. When you think about what our panelists said about people-centered approach, whether it's our workforce, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's the citizenry. This is technology, but thinking about the adoptions of revolutionary technology through a people-centered approach is revolutionary in and of itself. And I think that that's what we heard today. And I will borrow from Secretary Snyder's opening remarks about the way in which the task force has collaborated, and the ways in which it's in our DNA to collaborate here in Massachusetts between government, business, non-for-profit, labor, workforce, everyone who's got a stake. And I think that bodes well for us too. So I'll close by saying I am even more looking forward to both the McKinsey report and the task force report coming out in the coming weeks. And I wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.